Yes, welcome class, and this is Edit class. We are still on other objects, and today we'll be discussing about factors. We have already gone through vectors, so they'll go one step ahead, and they'll be discussing about factors. When we speak of factors in R, they're just simply R objects which are created using vectors. Okay, so in other words, you can speak a factor to be a special vector that stores categorical variables such as gender, occupation, make of car, country, and etc. That, for instance, when you make a vector can be of different type or different format depending on the use. Now, you can create a special vector when you have categorical variables, and that special vector can be termed to be a factor. Think, for instance, you are dealing with the, let's say, education level of students, for instance. So you may have some with primary education, with secondary education, with, let's say, college education, vocational education, different categories. Now, those are categorical in nature. So to be used conveniently in R, then you need to tell the software that this is a factor variable. Okay. Or for instance, as example, if you are trying to analyze some variables relating to employment, let's say categories. Okay. When you ask someone to tell you about his or her employment status, person can maybe employed or not employed, maybe public employee or self-employee. Okay, so those are some of the variables. The vectors can be considered vectors in R, yes, but they have special case or special treatment simply because they are categorical, that they can be categorized. So such variables, you can declare them in R as factors. And mind you that in some analysis you need to tell the software that to treat a certain variable as categorical for you to have convenient results or appropriate outputs. So we have factors, and in this tutorial I'll show you how to make or to construct vectors which bears a factor variable in R. So we go through the slides and see the procedure step by step on how to go about, and then we switch on to R console to see how we can go into practice. But first of all, let me take you through the slides to see what we have. Now, when creating factors, we use a function factor. You open and close brackets. So in the brackets, you type the vector object for which you need to make it a factor variable. So you may have your vector already, okay, with some entries or some categories, and then you need to make that particular vector a factor. So you simply type factor, you open and close brackets, and then in the brackets you type either the name of the vector object, or you specify a vector, a factor variable if you haven't specified. So it depends on what do you have at hand in that particular time. Then after having a factor variable, you may wish to know the levels, that how many categories are there or how many levels is your variable having. So we use the function n level. Okay. If you type n level, it will always give you the number of counts or the number of levels for that specific factor variable. Okay. And by default, Allah assign the levels in alphabetical order or in ascending order. So if for instance you type, let's say, some categories, education level, for instance, we are dealing with education, you have primary, you have secondary, you have, let's say, college education, and let's say, yes, the three categories: primary, secondary, college. So if you you make a vector with three categories: primary, secondary education, level education, then you change that particular vector to factors. Then Allah will assign some values, okay, to that particular factor variable, and by default the assignment will be done alphabetical wise. That's by default, unless you specify the order in which you want your factors to, so your categories to appear. That's what it does. Now here is just an example. That think, for instance, we have a vector having the classes, okay, list of classes, student classes. That we have both 1, both 2, both 3, okay, both 1 to both 3. Now we assign that particular variable both 1 here. This is both 1, both 2, both 3. This is just a normal vector, you see. Now this is assigned to a variable program. Okay, we assign this to a variable, sorry, to an object program, so not a variable. Okay, now if you ask for a class of this, it will tell you that program is just a character. Okay, it's a vector having characters both 1, both 2 to both 3. Okay, now our concern is to change this one to make it a factor object, you see, because you know both 1, this is for bachelor 1 students, both 2 for bachelor 2, both 3 for bachelor 3. Now we can make this as a categorical object in Allah. Now to make it categorical, we go back to our function factor. So we create factors, and this is just an assignment that F program, meaning factor program, we make an assignment equal to factor program. So you simply type factor and then you specify the object name for which you want the categories to be changed as factors. So if we type program, then fact means this program will be changed into factor. This one will be changed into factor. So if you call or you print F program, you print this. If you print F program, it will give you the 3 levels. They are now factors. Okay, you can see both 1, both 2, both 3. These are now factor variable, and you can see the levels. You have both 1, both 2, both 3, meaning that we have 3 levels. And if you use the structure command, in previously when you use the structure command for program, we had the dimension is 1 to 3 within. First letter type, it was character, number 1, structure, so dimension 1 to 3, and these were the characters in our program object. But now if you call the F program object, the structure for F program, it will tell us that this is now a factor. Here it was a character with levels, 3 levels. That's usual. Then both 1, both 2 to both 3 is missing because of space. And after all these, having the categories, it will also give you the value labels, meaning both 1 is labeled 1, both 2 bears a number 2, both 3 bears how much? 3. So you can capture the difference between this one, the first one, F program, and this program with no F. This is the character data type. It's a character object, but after changing it to factor by using a factor function, and assigning it to an object F program, we have now a factor. So if you use the function levels, it will give you the categories, that is both 1, both 2, both 3, but n levels gives you the count. How many are they? We have 3 categories. So simple. This is how to make a factor in R. You simply use a function factor, and then you specify a vector that you wish to change. That's number one. Here in this example, you can straight away create your factors in a different format. That here we started by creating a vector object, okay, and then changing this vector into a factor. That's what we did. We created a vector which is character in nature, and then we changed this into factor by using the factor command. Okay. Now what is this side saying? This says after creating your factor, okay, let me go back here, pick one thing. We had both 1, both 2, both 3 are the orders of our factor variable. Okay. By default, what I said is R assigns or treats the factors in ascending order. So you can see both 1 given the value 1, both 2 value 2, both 3 value number 3. Now, if you wish then to change the levels, okay, for instance, in the previous example, both 1 was assigned the value 1. Now, if you need to interchange that both 1 to have the value, let's say 3, both 2, number 1, both 3, number 2, for instance, then you can simply specify the levels right here. So you simply type factor, just press your factor variable, okay, and then with the command levels, you specify how do you wish your levels to be captured by the R program, not the default one. By default, it was 1, 2, and 3 for both 1, both 2, and both 3 respectively. So you may wish to change the levels. Maybe number 1 for both 2, 2 for both 3, and 3 for both 1. Okay. Or number 3 for both 2, number 1 for both 3, and number 2 for both 1. Okay. So you may wish to change the default setting in R. Now, when you wish to change the default setting in R, we simply use the function n levels. Okay. So how to go about with this? Let me show you. Here is an example. Okay. It says the ordering categorical variable. You can always follow these steps, but you can do your own R. So we simply type factor. We have program. Remember, program is our object which we create having 3 levels, both 1, both 2, both 3. Okay. Now we assign this into an object called the order program. So next we have levels. Levels C, then in brackets we specify the order in which we want our values to be assigned. By default, what we said is R assigns levels by ascending order. So both 1 was the first one, if you remember, both 2 was the second, and both 3 was the third. Now for instance, we wish to change to make both 1 to be a value 1, both 2, both 1 a value 1, 2, and both 2 a value number 3. So we have to change the order. It means by writing it in this way, both 1 will take a value 1, both 2, both 3 will take a value 1, both 1 number 2, and both 2 number 3. Now if you execute this command and you call your order program, you will have both 1, both 2, both 3 as usual. Levels, both 3, both 1, both 2. What does it mean? These are the categories, both 1, both 2, and both 3. But this is the arrangement of the levels, means box 1 is the first, box 2 the second, sorry, box 1 the second, and box 2 the third. So with levels, it gives you the arrangement of the your categories. Now if you use the structure command, instead of the factor with 3 levels, and the box 3 is number 1, box 2, box 1 number 2, and lastly it is box 2. You can see it is 2. It is 2, 3, 1, meaning box 1 is this number 2, box 2 is this one number 3, and box 3 is this one number 1. Okay, that is one thing. Okay, so we have seen how to move from an object, a vector object which is character in image, and then you change that particular object into factor, and then by changing it to factor, it will take default assignments. Then next, after changing it to factors, you can still reorder the levels. Now, in the next function here, I want to show you that you can straight away make a factor without first having a vector. That you can straight away make your factor variable or your factor object in R without going through all those steps. So what do? You simply specify your categories, and then you assign the labels, okay, by default. Or if you need a default setting, there's no need for assigning the labels. But if you wish to reorder your labels, then you need to assign labels like this. If you don't need this one, it means Allah will assign labels by using the default setting. So with this one, you don't need to make a vector object. Okay, you simply make your factor object by using the function factor. You specify your categories and then the labels. So this is most, mass, boss, bib, certificate. Okay, these are the programs. But with the labels, it is certificate, diploma, boss, most, mass. So you can see most is the first to be listed here. So this list here is what appears somewhere here. But with the levels, it gives you the ordering of the categories, meaning that certificate is assigned a value 1, diploma is assigned a value 2, boss is assigned a value 3, most value 4, and mass number 5. So if you call a class, it will tell you that this is a factor. If you call the class, it tells you that this is a factor. Okay. Now structure, we have factor. Level, there are 5 levels, with certificate being the first one, diploma the second, boss the third, most the fourth, and math the fifth. Now don't confuse this and this element here. Now 4, 5, 3, 2, 1, it gives you the order for these levels here. That most is number 4, mass is 5, boss is 3, dip is 2, and certificate is number 1. Okay, I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but that's how to make factors. You can move from the vectors to factors, or you can straight away make a factor without first creating a vector object. Okay, that's number 1. So we have seen how to make factors, how to assign the labels for particular vectors. Now if you can remember, we have what we call value labels. Okay, you may wish to label your values, okay, by some specific labels so that it will be easier for you to identify. So in such situation, we use the function vector. You specify your vector variable or your object, you assign the labels if possible, if you need to do so, and then you assign the value labels. So we have a vector object, levels vector and labels vector. We have 3 things right there. Now, how is it working? Let's see. Here is an example of a syntax that shows how to make factors. Okay. Syntax showing how to come up with the factors. You can just copy this and try to execute in your program, or you can simply go through with me and you will easily understand. Let's go on one after the other to see how it works. Now, firstly, I start with creating my vector objects. The vector for the names, it means my categories. Another vector for the order, that which ordering do I wish to have, and the another vector for the names. Okay, let's back here. We have the first vector is for the objects, the second for the levels, and the third for the labels. So I can create 3 vectors. One vector for the objects, vector objects like this one. The second one, a vector for the labels, and the third, a vector for the value labels. It's written right here. The first vector is for my categories. Sorry. The second is for the ordering, that which one do I need to start with, and the third is for the names. Okay. So after having these vectors, I can simply create my factor object in R by using the vector for names, the order, and the names. So simply type programs, let's take programs for instance. You create a factor variable, program. This is a vector objects, my categories, levels, the ordering. How do you wish your ordering to appear? I want most to be the first, must the second, both the third, the fourth, and specifically the fifth. So if you see this arrangement, the ordering is the same as the first one. Okay, but if you ignore this, it means R will arrange by default settings certificate to be the first one, because boss will be the first one, C the second, D the third, MA the fourth, and this will be the fifth. But with this ordering, it means most will be the first, must the second, both the third, the fourth, and the fifth. And here are the names. Boss means Master of Offshore Statistics. Okay, Master of Agricultural Statistics. Boss, Bachelor of Offshore Statistics. D, Diploma in Statistics. Certificate, that is Certificate in Statistics. And here are the theme. We have the program, levels, and others. So if we exclude this one, we'll have a factor variable with all these ISTEC programs. Okay. Now here you can see Master of Offshore Statistics. When you call ISTEC programs, the most, mass, boss, dip, and certificate will no longer appear. You will later have the names Master of Offshore Stat, Master of Agricultural Stat, Bachelor of Offshore Stat, Diploma in Stat, and Certificate in Stats. So the names will appear instead of these the categories, and here the labels. Okay, so names. Now there are different formats of naming. For instance, with this one, I was naming by leaving some space, and you can see from here the labels. Sometimes it may not be easier for you to know the demarcation, to know where this starts and where does it end. Okay, so in such situation, you can adopt a different naming. You can use dots, you can use underscores for you to differentiate. For instance, in the second example here, it is the same thing, but I've just changed the names. I've used the instead of space, I've used the dots instead of space. Okay. Now when you execute these commands and you print ISTEC programs, you have Master of Offshore Stat. You can see they are now spelled with dots, space, Master in Agricultural Stat, space Bachelor of Social Studies, diploma in statistics and certificate in statistics. And you can use the structure command to have all these: the data type, the levels, the objects, and the ordering pattern. So these are factors in R and how to make them in different formats. Okay. What is saying? We have seen some factors, how to make factor variables. Factor variables which are categorical in nature. Now, you do remember that the factors or categorical variables can be ordered or can be nominal. Okay, can be ordered or can be nominal. So if you have to declare the ordered categorical variable in R, okay, if you wish to declare ordered categorical variable in R, you have to set the ordered function, okay, as true. So in this function we insert another function for ordering, and we set order equal to true for R to capture the variable as the ordered categorical variable. Now, how is it implemented? Is here. This is an example. Okay. It says, first we have the weight quintals, we have the labels, and we have the levels, as it was in this example right here. We had the ESTEC programs, order, and the names. Okay. So we have the weight quintals, levels, and labels. So we want to make a factor variable for this. What we do, we simply type weight equal to factor weight quintals, okay, levels, it is this much, and labels, this one right here. Now remember, weight quintals, okay, they are grouped either rich, poor, very poor, average, things like that. Okay. Now, if you need to make that particular object to be the ordered variable, then you need to set ordered function equal to how much? To true. So after specifying the vector names, after specifying the variables, levels, and the labels, then you need to use another function, ordered, and you set this true for your function, for your object to be treated as an ordered object, ordered categorical variable in R. Okay. So if you call weight, you have this rich, richest, average, poor, and poorest, as you have listed them right here. Okay. Levels, then it will be from poorest, poor, average, rich, and richest. It's poorest, poor, average, rich, and richest, depending on how you have given the levels right here. Okay. So the other things remain the same. Structure is this one, and you can index, as we saw in vectors, that you can index vectors. So indexing is the same as we used to do in vectors. So that is R analysis package, and how you can use R in creating factors. So you have seen you can create a factor simply by typing a factor and then you specify the object, and that will take the default settings in R. You can specify the object and the levels. You can specify the object, levels, and labels, but also can specify the objects, levels, labels, and the ordered function. So that will be the last slide. Thank you for listening, and I can take you through a quick lab on how to do that in R. Let me open my R. This is my R console. Where should I work? The do file, the script, so do file, script file. Okay, let me open a script file right here. This is my file, my script file. Now, initially we saw on how to create factors. So what I can do, for instance, I type in name, let's say Istech causes. I use the underscore, then I type causes. I create a vector for Istech causes equal to C. Then I read some causes right here. That is MOS, number 1, mass, BOSS, then DEEP, diploma in statistics, that is DEEP. We have certificate in statistics. So if I execute this, okay, if I execute this command, I execute this, it means I will have this one as just a vector, simply a vector. Because if I call the structure, for instance, I type the structure Istech causes, out like this. Structure Istech causes. I think it's fine. Okay. Now if I execute, I have that this is a character. Let's start with dimension 1 to 5, and here are the entries. So you can see it's a character with dimensions 5 entries, and here are the entries MOS, mass, of certificate. So what I said is to change this into factor. Okay, to write, to change the vector, so to change the vector into factor, we use a factor command, factor function, the function of command function. Yeah, so I can simply type that one, maybe factor for Istech causes. Okay, so equal to. So I use the function factor. What am I factoring? I just want to factor this. Let me copy this and paste it right here for me not to confuse things. So if I use this function factor here, it means I'm trying now to change this from character data type to factor data type. Okay, so upon executing, it means I already changed now into factor, and I will assign it in an object called Istech causes. So now if I try to find the structure for this, what do I have? It's now a factor with 5 levels and both certificate, diploma. That is how it is. And you can see what I said is, by default, R treats or assign the numbers or the levels by alphabetical order if you don't specify. So you can see BOSS is given a value 5, MOS number 1, and the first is BOSS is B. Okay, then number 2 is certificate, it starts with the C. Number 3, it is diploma, it starts with D. So most of the marks are given the value 4 and 5 respectively. So that is the default setting in R. Okay, now what do you say later on? That you can make what you call the ordering. The ordering, it means you just change the order of your categories the way you wish. Okay, so I can simply take the same. Let me take the same question right here. and just make some few edits. Okay, so this is f causes, let's say number 2, f causes 2 equal to factor instead causes. Now what we need, we want to put the levels equal to, simply type C and then you specify the levels. Okay, now the first is most, mass, boss, deep, and so it depends. If for instance this ought to be the first, this is the second, the fourth, the fifth, the fourth, or the first, the second, the third, the fifth, the fourth. Okay, in that order. So you simply assign the values. Let's say I need the most to be the first. So I simply type here most, then mass, the second, the third should be boss, the fifth should be div, and last one should be set. You see, so I have assigned the labels. So it means most here is at the value 5, the fifth category in ordering, but here now it will be the first category. Mass was the fourth category. In this ordering it will be the second. Boss was the first. In this ordering it will be the third, like that. So if I execute this, then I just print this one. Okay, structure for this, structure that one. So what you are having, you can see now most, mass, boss. What the difference is here, right here. Now mass was the fifth, we have changed it into 1. This was the fourth, is now the second. Boss was the first category, but now it is the third category. This was the third category, here it is the fourth. This was the second category, and now it is the fifth. So what you have changed is just the order of the categories. That's number 1. The third, what we said is that we can assign labels. We can assign value labels, assignment. Okay, value labels assignment. I'm seeing the same example that we know this is most. Now we need to clarify what is most. Okay, define this. Let me take the same thing, then what I do, I simply edit this for you to understand. So I just change the name. Let's now it's number 3. Then factor is the causes, levels, the mismatch. Then what next is the labels. Okay, so I type here comma, we can simply enter. Alternatively, you can write this in this way. Simply enter. Okay, and then again we press enter right here. We write labels. How you to do some labels like that? In place. Then see. So I have to label these to assign the names. So this is master, for instance, in official. Okay. Next is master. So master in agricultural agro. Next it is master, bachelor of official, Next it is diploma, in statistics. Next is certificate, in statistics. You see, we are done. Those are the labels. So what do you have? Means when you execute this, we expect to see these value labels. Okay, now let's execute this and see what comes up. Okay, we are done with the execution. Now let us print this. can just start the structure for this thing right here. It's equals this number 3. Okay. Now if first for structure here, you can see now we have the full name, mass and official statistics. Let me print this. Let me simply print here. I can print. Let's print this. You see now we have Master of Official Statistics, Master of Agro, Bachelor of Official, Diploma in Statistics, Certificate in Statistics, instead of Mass, Moss, Boss, Dip, and Certificate. And here are the levels: Master of Official, Master of Agro, Bachelor of Official, and the last one is Certificate in Statistics. Okay, so that's how to work with R. The other thing you have seen is, after you have set the default setting, you have specified the levels, you have assigned the value labels, there is also another option that you can use when you have some values which are ordered. They are ordered categorical variables. So for instance, let's assume that these are the first pattern that they can be ordered. So with ordering, to tell R that this is an ordered categorical object or categorical variable, I will simply use another function for ordering, and we set it true. So let me just simply copy this for simplicity. I paste right here. Okay, let's come back here. This is now number 4. So with ordering, I simply come and edit this. What I add, simply ordered, then equal to how much? I simply set true. Ordered, is it written correctly? Ordered, I think it's correctly written. I simply set it true. So if I execute this, what do I have? Oh, what's an error message? This match and use argument ordered. Where the problem? Ordered. Is it small case? Ordered true. Yes. So we are done now. So if I call this now, this is now an ordered categorical variable. Okay, you can see the symbols, meaning this is ordered categorical variable. So that's all about factors, on how you can transform just a normal vector into factors, how you can assign labels, how you can assign value labels, how you can reorder in the levels of the categorical variables, and how you can make some ordering. And this is just a simple do file, script file we have just created for us, and this was ordering the categorical variable, or you can simply call variable. So we have assigned some order. So you can simply copy this script file to your R program and try to make some practice for you to understand. Thank you for being with me, and join me in the next session. Shall be trying to work on matrices. Thank you for listening. Bye.